This is Van Maluk that goes doing live on the air with Emily Flood for the first time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. We've been podcasting since 2016, so we're out about 860 episodes. So we've been out here for a while, but we always find it fun to talk to new people and interesting to hear different people's points of view from around the world. And
Mhm.
before we get into that, I want to let people know we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform, and we'll be on that platform in a couple hours. If you use coupon code GHOST, you can get 1 month free premium subscription there so you can stop scrolling and start listening. We are a featured podcast on Newsly. This episode will be on Newsly within a couple hours. And again, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Now, the focus, we like to let people know what the focus is. So this episode is going to be Unshaming Fitness by Reprogramming Your Brain, which is a recommended focus that you had. And we want to kind of get into that for what does that actually mean, maybe the term unshaming fitness.
Yeah, so a lot of people start a fitness journey or a weight loss journey because they don't like the way that they look. And that stems from shame because we kind of grew up with a lot of messages around our bodies not looking the right way, a lot of shame around what we feel like we're supposed to look like. And that really impacts your fitness journey and your weight loss efforts because those feelings of shame, those feelings of like, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with my body, especially as you continue on into your adult life. And a lot of people end up, you'll lose the weight and then you gain it all back in this cycle of yo-yo dieting, which just brings people deeper and deeper into shame where they feel like, oh, I lost the weight, but then I gained it all back. And they feel that sense of shame for not being able to just stick to it or not being able to accomplish these things that a lot of other people seem to accomplish pretty easily. And the thing about shame when it comes to your brain, it activates the part of your brain that is where fight or flight kicks in. So your automatic kind of trauma responses. And when you're operating from that part of your brain, when you're feeling bad about yourself, you aren't able to make as good of decisions as you would otherwise. So when you're operating from fight or flight, the cookies or the cake starts to look a lot better to you because you're operating from fight or flight or fawn or freeze, which are different trauma responses that you might have. And so when you're constantly telling yourself, like, I'm not good enough, like, why can't I just do this? You're always operating from that part of your brain. And so this concept of unshaming fitness is helping you to release that shame that keeps you stuck in fight or flight and moving towards using your prefrontal cortex more, which the opposite of shame is self-love. And so when you can come from a place of loving yourself and loving your body into a fitness journey, that helps activate your prefrontal cortex, which is where good decision making comes from. And the prefrontal cortex is also responsible for like discipline and sticking with things. And again, the good solid decision making when you are coming from a place of calm within your body instead of fight or flight. And so what this might look like, because I know a lot of
And we
people
said
are like, well, I still want to lose. Sorry, what?
Sorry, keep on going. Keep on going.
Okay.
I thought you
Yeah.
finished there, but keep on going.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, they'll say, well, Emily, like, I still want to lose weight. I don't really like the way that my body looks right now. And that's fine. But you can still love yourself into changes. So instead of going to the gym because you hate yourself, you're going to the gym because you love yourself enough to seek changes. You love yourself enough to improve your health for your kids so that you can climb mountains, so that you can chase your kids around, and so that you can have more energy and more confidence, so that you can fit into the dress or the suit that you want. And so coming from that place of self-love and releasing shame, but we all kind of grew up in the shame paradigm where our brains are like programmed to see problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was reading about your own journey where you were working toward fitness, and then you found yourself getting into some like behaviors that weren't actually. Because when you think about fitness and exercising, well, that's always positive. But I
Yeah.
never really thought about how that kind of fitness journey, you could start to do things that are negative to your body, even though you're doing something that outwardly looks very positive. Like
Yeah.
outwardly, we could see you in the gym working out, but then behind that, you had some bad like eating habits and other things you were doing that maybe people didn't see, and it has this situation where it creates more shame, right?
Exactly. So I competed in bodybuilding. So in 2020 I competed on the national level bodybuilding stage. I got some muscles, and the process of bodybuilding itself is probably the most extreme diet that you could ever go on, because to get as competition lean or as small as you need, it requires like harming your body in a way to get that small, because for women, both men and women, you need a good amount of body fat on you to be healthy. And if you're below a certain body fat percentage, then you start to get things like negative hunger signals. Women especially, they tend to lose their periods. All these negative health markers come into play. And so for me especially, the mental
Mm,
focus that I had to have to reach that level of leanness and the strictness that I had to have with my diet, it kind of caused a rebound after, to where like I didn't know how not to eat food when I wasn't tracking every single gram of it, because that's what I had to do for
mm,
my competitions.
yeah.
And so then after my competitions, I had so much anxiety in my body if I would like have 1 gram of food over what I was supposed to have, because it created shame in my brain. Like, I'm not being perfect, I'm messing up. Because again, I'd kind of conditioned myself to be perfect to reach that level of athleticism for the competitions that I was doing. And so then that kind of spiraled to where I was eating like entire jars of peanut butter in 24 hours, because what would happen is like I I would get stressed out. Like if I was at the gym, I have ADHD, and so sometimes like sensory things really get to me. And if the gym is too loud or too hot, that'll cause a lot of stress in my body. And so then again, I'm operating from that fight or flight mode. And then I'd go home anxious, feeling like I failed my workout. And then the peanut butter would be there. And
Mm.
because I'm operating from that fight or flight portion of my brain, it's like I don't even think. And then suddenly I'm eating the peanut butter. And then, of course, then when I'm eating the peanut butter, then the next thought in my head is, I'm a fitness coach. I'm an athlete. What in the world am I doing? Like, I'm messing up. Like, I'm a failure as a fitness coach. And continuing to operate from shame, shame, shame just kept me in that peanut butter cycle. And so it wasn't until like I
Yeah.
was able to get into the real subconscious needs behind like why I was eating the peanut butter and operate more from a place of self-love that I was able to release that emotional eating.
So it's interesting that type of regimen is causing like nutritional disorders or
Mhm.
food disorders, because you have to be so disciplined that maybe it takes all the fun out of like being a human being is to enjoy you know food. And then when you can't
Exactly.
enjoy food, it's become like a tool that has like then the aesthetics of like being a cook, and I like to cook. Then you can't enjoy food, because if you're so narrowly focused on food as it's a tool to get to that fitness level, then you're not going to have the aesthetic value of food, like the beauty of food in itself, and then you can't enjoy it. So that must make you feel psychologically bad that you like now you can't enjoy food. So how that must cause a lot of stress. You're thinking about everything you're going to put in your mouth.
Yeah. And the thing about, if you are on fitness social media and you've got fitness coaches on your social media feed and everything, you hear a lot of people saying food is fuel. Well, food is fuel, yes, but food is also memories and enjoyment and nostalgia and all these things from our childhood around food. But if you get so focused in on that fitness mindset and you are like enjoying food for something other than fuel, you get that sense of shame, because you feel like to be
Mm,
on a fitness
yeah.
journey, you should only think about food as fuel. And so it creates really toxic relationships with food. And so all these women who like go on diets where they're like super extreme, like have to follow the meal plan, they then feel shame if they're off plan at all, when really a fitness journey should be something that fits into your life and really doesn't take away from your life, to where if you enjoy going out to eat, that you can still do that. If you enjoy cooking, you can still make yourself meals without having to radically change your life.
Yeah, this seems like there's a whole thing about the guilt is very damaging. And then you think about like people go on the yo-yo diet. There's a very big example like Luther Vandross. He
Mhm.
used to do extreme dieting to the point it damages like his heart, and he died early of a heart attack because he was doing these very radical yo-yo diets, going way up and way down over
Yeah.
time, and it's damaging to your body to do that. I've even seen method actors that will go and lose tons of weight and then gain tons of weight for the role. And then that damages your body. And I understand that that's your art, but you've got to think about like being an athlete. If you damage your body for your athleticism, or damage it for your musicians, can do the same thing. They could burn themselves out because they're trying to be perfect musicians, and then they don't eat
Yeah.
right and they don't get the nutritional value. So every time you do something that you're passionate about, you think you have to be mindful of kind of like your holistic self, your body, your soul, your mind, and your spirit. And sometimes people just focus only on the body, or only on the
Exactly.
mind, or only on the heart. Like it's what you got. You're not just one thing. You got to, you're
Exactly.
holistic. Yeah. So how do you get the balance? How do you go from being unbalanced to getting some type of balance?
Really, it comes into connecting body, mind, and soul. And so the way that I like to think about it is that, well, your brain is still an organ of your body. And so how you think and feel about yourself, and in addition, like the emotions that we feel those emotions in our body. So emotions aren't just something like esoteric, they're a part of our body as well. And so what I like to do with clients is that when they are experiencing some form of self-sabotage, instead of, the classic shame, like, oh, I'm not good enough, I can't follow the plan, we like to look at that self-sabotage as, how is this really like a solution for the some want and need that is being expressed through this self-sabotage. So for example, I have a client who has been binging on peanut butter like I used to do. And
Mm.
when we kind of looked at her life a little bit more holistically, we have kind of discovered this pattern where she grew up kind of as a people pleaser, really keeping the peace in her house with a not so great like childhood family situation. And that has progressed into her adult life, where she actually experiences bullying at her workplace, where the women that she works with will make fun of what she wears if she's not wearing like the cool thing. And so she has tried her hardest her entire life to fit in. And so with her fitness journey, she's been yo-yoing, where she can easily lose the weight if she goes super extreme, but she's developed what she thinks is a problem with eating peanut butter. And when we kind of dove in and used some neuropsychology techniques and like some emotional embodiment work that I do with clients, we discovered that her craving for peanut butter was actually her body's way of expressing its desire for her to just be herself. Except
Mm.
she doesn't feel safe being herself anywhere else in her life. So she gets cravings for peanut butter because her body's like, okay, well, we don't really need to lose the weight because we can just be ourselves. And so it's like that subconscious need and desire that she wasn't even fully aware of is what's driving her craving for peanut butter. And so if she really desires to lose weight, then she needs to start releasing the people pleasing and trying to fit in these other areas of her life, or she'll continue to crave peanut butter.
That's interesting because I've had a lot of life coaches and mentors that are on. And it always comes back to like the core problem behind what might be their parent problem, right? A lot of times it's
Yeah.
like you have to go look at the source. What is
Mhm.
the source of like alcoholism or any types of addiction? Like usually you have to, it's not just like because you like it, there's usually a deeper source of something that
Mhm.
happened. And a lot of people, if they never address what really triggered it, what's the real cause? So a lot of people
Exactly.
don't want to deal with that truth. And as long as you hide from the truth, it's kind of like it's hard to love yourself if you're not being honest in
Yeah.
looking in the looking glass. And like I'm
And
a poet. Yeah, I mean that's the poetic term, but but
um did I freeze?
yeah, you froze a little bit. Oh, now you're back.
Oh, okay. I'm back now. But what's more is that I think people are afraid to kind of dig in and like do this deeper mindset work for their fitness journey because of shame, because they don't want to look at it because they're scared of it. Except like when we look at this client's craving for peanut butter, it's actually kind of beautiful that her body's sending her a craving for peanut butter because her body desires for her to be herself. And so that kind of takes the shame away from her binge eating of peanut
Hmm.
butter because her body knows that she just wants to be herself. And that's a lot more beautiful and kind of poetic than just like, you're a failure of a client for eating peanut butter.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a different mindset. Whether you have to look at things and find a way to gracefully, get to the next point in your life. Because like when you're going through something, beating yourself up on everything is probably not the solution. Um,
Exactly.
so so a lot of times, like as a musician, like we have to understand that like most of our songs fail, right? So
Yeah.
the thing is, like failure is part of our creative process. So if you get upset the fact that 9,900 songs fail, keep on doing it. It's just inherently part of the creative process that it's going to be like that. Like not everybody's going to get it. So
Hmm.
in order to do it, you have to be able to deal with the failure as part of the process. And it's actually not a negative thing to try something and then not be successful because it helps you get to the next thing.
Exactly. One thing I like to tell my clients is that challenges are really opportunities. So each time they experience emotional eating, that's something that we can look into and be like, I wonder why this happened with more of curiosity than shame. Each time they, you know, film a lift and they send me a training video and maybe their squat form isn't perfect, well, that's an opportunity for me to help them get better. And so again, it helps release the shame of knowing that you're not going to be perfect, but each time it's an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, because the problem with some people is like if they fail too much, then they just stop, right?
Yeah.
Instead of the progression to get better. Like how are you ever going to get better, as a cook, unless you break a couple eggs? Like your probably first couple versions of your cake aren't going to be it.
Yeah.
And just because that first time or the third time and like, well, you quit after the fifth time, it's like, well, maybe by the 10th time you might have got better, but you never know if you don't try. So I think a lot of times it's like that kind of analogy is like you have to kind of give yourself the space and the permission to not be.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned cooking because I am also a recipe developer. I'm not sure if I put that on my podcast bio, but I had to, when I was trying to create like a protein mug cake, I had to make dozens of mug cakes that failed, that were horrible, that didn't taste good at all before I finally like figured out the precise formula for
Mhm.
creating like a good protein mug cake that was actually delicious.
Yeah, it's very creative. Like I like to cook, I like to bake, I like to, just being a creative person, I like different outlets, to do different
Mhm.
things. And then sometimes like you could do things too much. Like one thing with a musician, like you could sit in the studio for 8 hours straight trying to get some bass line right. Or you
Yeah.
could realize that you're not getting it, go for a walk, go for a swim, go do something else, and then come back to it instead of
Mhm.
obsessing and just, doing it to the point where you hurt your hands because you cause carpal tunnel because you're going too crazy. Right. You gotta give yourself a break. You can't, we can get repetitive motion injuries as musicians if we get too obsessive.
Yeah, and that's something that I talk a lot about with my fitness clients as well, because since we're trying to operate our fitness journeys from a place of love and desire over, not liking the way that we look in the mirror, not liking the number on the scale, trying to move towards something that we do want. I like to help women focus on strength. So desiring to feel strong, desiring to fit into the dress, desiring to wear the bikini on the beach. And so when you can operate from desire, there's going to be some days where you don't want to go work out or that you don't want to do certain things. And then we kind of get to look at that and be like, well, maybe the reason why you don't want to work out is because you're not allowing yourself to rest or have fun anywhere in your life, because we have so much of this like toxic hustle mentality where we always need to be working and always need to be doing things. Like you were talking about, like spending 8 hours in the recording studio. And so I really help my clients to see how resting and having fun can actually be really impactful for their fitness journeys, because if you're not resting, you're not going to be sleeping well. If you're not sleeping well, then you're going to have more cravings for food, and it all impacts everything. And your stress levels, impact the amount of cortisol that you have in your body. The amount of cortisol that you have affects your ability to lose weight.
Yeah, that's interesting about the cortisol too, because I had my daughter had some cortisol issues, but she had some inherent, and a lot of people don't understand like their cortisol levels, that they don't understand what they might be doing to affect them. And so it's to have a holistic approach. Like, so you're taking a very holistic approach and then trying to get people to be really in touch and not be too extreme about anything, right? Just to kind of find that balance again, to figure out like what you're doing,
Exactly.
and what the things you do have, right?
Yeah. So I do a lot of meditations with clients. We figure out morning and evening routines. We talk about different ways to rest and have fun, in addition to, of course, like the science of nutrition and working out. Because I find that since a lot of my clients do go into the gym and we focus on strength training and building muscle, that a lot of the typical coaches that you see who do strength training in gyms are more of that almost like bro coaching type of like, just get it done, like food is fuel, kind of aggressive style of coaching that really doesn't address the person as a whole, and where there is a lot of shame involved. And like I have heard of coaches who, like, if I've had a client who like wanted to go on a date night with her husband every week, and her fitness coach told her no, that she had to stick to the plan. And for me, I'm like, well, I want my clients to enjoy their lives, because otherwise, if I'm teaching them this process of like, you have to stick to your diet 7 days a week, then the moment that they leave my coaching, they're not going to know how to still have a normal life and go on dates if I haven't taught them how to do that. And then they're going to yo-yo and gain all the weight back again. And my goal as a coach isn't just to get a client's like weight loss transformation picture. Like so many fitness coaches, they just want you to have the extreme before picture and then the extreme after picture with the differences. And then if you leave their coaching and you gain all the weight back, well, then you're probably going to come back for coaching with them again and continue to pay them. But for me, I want to set my clients up for long-term success to where they don't ever need me or any other fitness coach again, because they've learned the skills to not just lose the weight, but then to maintain it long-term.
That seems a more positive approach. I've actually heard therapists talk about that too, where there's certain therapists, they might get you hooked on their therapy or their processes or whatever they're doing, and then you really never gain independence or knowledge
Yeah.
of what they're actually teaching you. Learn it, do it yourself, right? So if you teach somebody some level of independence, like if you teach a musician how to be a producer and a recording engineer, then they don't actually have to come to you all the time. But if you're the type of person, you never really show them what engineering tricks or production tricks, because you want them to only come to you. So they become dependent on you because you never really give up the keys. You never really give up the knowledge. And so you have this kind of dependent relationship rather than actually getting somebody to, like, I don't need all these people to be like dependent on me. I want them to actually be successful.
Yeah. And that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I've had to do a lot of my own internal work to it's codependency in a way, to want to have your clients be dependent on you forever and always have to need you. And so
Mm,
I've had to do a lot of work around like releasing my own like codependent patterns to feel safe with helping build up my clients' own independence, knowing that I want them to be able to do this on their own. Because if I don't do that internal work, then somehow, some way, it's going to come out like subtly where I have to do things for them. And so I
hmm
work a lot with clients on like helping them to trust themselves and trust their bodies and trust their own hunger signals, to where they don't need to text me if they want to have an extra date night with their husbands. They know that it's okay and that I'm not going to be upset with them. So doing a lot of trust work with clients, so that way they're not fearing that I'm going to yell at them or be mad at them because they went off plan. Because if the whole goal is for them to trust themselves and their bodies, then there's no such thing as off plan.
Yeah, because if the plan becomes like more important than all the aspects of your life, then you become addicted to the plan. And then you're
Yeah.
not actually, if the whole goal was to get in fit in shape so you could enjoy your life and wear the dress, wear the suit, be able to do something, but then all you do is just stuck in the narrow confines of a plan,
Mhm.
then you're not actually enjoying life. So
Yeah.
what your original goal is has become something else, and now you're addicted to the plan.
And that's what happened
But
for me with my fitness journey, because like when I was competing and doing my bikini competitions, like I got abs, I got shredded. I went and I bought a bunch of bikinis and I was like, yes, I can go to the pool, I'll go to the beach. And then I never did,
mhm.
because then it was like, oh, well, I always have to go to the gym. I always have work to do on my business. And suddenly, like, I wasn't enjoying my life at all, because then the other thing that popped up was still body shame, but in the opposite way. Because then I started to get scared of going to the pool because I'm too much for people. I'm too muscular. Like I'm going to freak people out at the pool if I'm
Oh, wow.
going, and I'm going to make people feel bad about themselves if I am this girl with abs wearing a bikini at the pool, because that's not normal. And so that's again like
Mm.
work for me to have to release that like shame of being too much and that people pleasing and like always wanting to make other people comfortable, instead of just making it more about like, I just want to enjoy going to the pool. And if other people have a problem with my body or have a problem with what I'm wearing, then I don't need to worry about that anymore.
That's kinda like the idea well, when you're a creative person, you can either try to be you or you can
Hmm.
try to clone somebody else, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of times, because of the way the industry is, it's like, "Oh, the top 20 is this." So everybody's trying to be in the top 20 and copy
Hmm.
the same things that they're doing, rather than taking what's individually unique about yourself and actually honing on that and making it the best version of you. So I always try to get
Exactly.
at people to say, I'd rather be a producer that doesn't try to clone what's going on, but take what you give me as your demo and say, I'm going to make the best version of that demo, the best version of you. And then
Hmm.
that is uniquely you and it doesn't sound like anybody else. And you shouldn't be scared that it doesn't sound like anybody else because it's you. And then you got to be confident enough to present yourself and not be scared of that, which I think is
Yeah.
similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I have to do continual work around that, because the first social media platform that I got into was Instagram. And Instagram is very much that almost like picture perfect place
Mhm.
where
Yeah, everybody
the
wants to.
algorithm, like I don't know if it's, I feel like it might be different today, but when I kind of got started on Instagram, like you wanted the picture perfect feed, you wanted everything to look nice. And so for me, I felt it. I still feel sometimes that it's hard to be myself on Instagram, and TikTok has been a great platform for me to be more myself.
Be
And
yourself, yeah.
yeah,
Or
and
you
I've been very celebrated. Like the TikTok algorithm has been wonderful for me and like has absolutely taken off, because it celebrates people being themselves more than
being
Instagram
different.
necessarily does.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, definitely. The algorithm on Instagram tends to like clone. It
yeah,
tends to want to create a lot of clones
Mhm.
and TikTok seems to be more open. It's more of an
Yeah.
open algorithm, which doesn't have as many constraints. Or like the constraints are kind of actually people have said it's actually bad for young kids to get into that algorithm because it gets them into like bad habits or bad process, things that might not be good for them because it's not allowing individuality as much as trying to make this certain pattern that
Yeah,
might
on
not
Instagram.
everybody can't always be in that pattern.
Yeah.
So, that can be very bad if you're a young person or any kind of person that gets tripped up in that. You
Mhm.
can get into the shame, what you were talking about. I mean, like, the shame, whether you're 17 or you're 33, it's still bad probably for you. It doesn't matter what
Absolutely.
age you are.
Mhm.
No, there's one thing you were talking about that I wanted to kind of get into, which is a different topic, but like you're talking about how do you incorporate witchcraft into your process? And I kind of want to understand that because a lot of people say when we're doing music, we're kind of getting into spiritualism and witchcraft and like, oh, where do we get these ideas? And it comes out of the ether, it comes out of this. And so yeah, how does that, what's your vision for that?
Yeah. So my favorite quote about like what being a witch is from Lisa Lister in her book called Witch. And the quote is, being a witch is being a woman in her power. And so for me, being a witch is all about empowerment and really trusting yourself and trusting your own inner authority and trusting your body, essentially. And so for me, and I know for so many of my clients, they don't trust their hunger signals. They don't trust their bodies because they've been conditioned to see their bodies as wrong or something that they need to fix. And so I don't think most of my clients identify as witches at all. But what I like to do with them is the first way that I started to learn to trust myself was through pulling tarot cards and oracle cards because I couldn't trust my hunger signals. I had to track my food, right? I didn't trust my body's hunger signals to tell me when it was time to eat and when I was done eating. But what I could start to trust is like, the concept with tarot cards is that you're just using your intuition to pull a card. It's not that some spirit is telling you what to pull a card. You're pulling the right one. And it's really easy to trust that, okay, this is the card for me today. All right. And you read it. And the thing about tarot cards is that usually there is something from each card that you can apply to your life for that day. And so
Mhm.
it's such a little simple, almost like a non-threatening way to start to trust your body and your intuition because it's low stakes. If the card isn't right for you, it doesn't matter. And so you
Mhm.
get to start to try it, and then as you pull these cards, you start to realize like, wait, these are all accurate. And then you start to be like, wow, my intuition is good. And that builds up trust with you. And then from then, I like to do a lot of meditations with clients where, especially for fitness clients, I'll do a guided visualization meditation for them to speak to their future self or their higher self to get advice from them. And so it's really interesting and it's really powerful in this way because so many people have resistance to getting advice. So if I tell a client, you need to be doing this, sometimes their first reaction is, well, I don't want to do that. Like defensiveness, like you don't know my life. I'm too busy for that. But if they get the same piece of advice from themselves in a
Mhm.
meditation, it just hits and impacts them differently. And they're like, oh, I do need to be doing this. And again, it helps them to build trust with themselves. And like, furthermore, if we get even more witchy and into witchcraft, like a lot of the time, spells for me and the way that I think of them, I really think of them as empowerment rituals and like spicy psychology in a way. And so I have my clients do self-love spells. You can do, you don't even have to call it a spell, but like a self-love ritual where you are honoring yourself and honoring your body. Like even if we get like outside of fitness, you could say like doing a money spell. Right? If you are struggling with money and you do a money spell, that helps you to believe that things are going to work out for you. And so it's the
Mhm.
same thing with if you were doing like a self-love spell, that helps you to believe that, okay, the spell is going to start to work, right? And I'm going to start to love myself more the more that I do these spells. And so it helps you to shift your mindset in the way that you think and feel about yourself. And so we do a lot of these things in my program called Fitness Witch Academy. And I help clients to create really intentional morning rituals to where I have a perfume that I spray on in the morning, and it's the Yves Saint Laurent Black Opium perfume. Because for me, I studied abroad in Paris when I was in college, and there was a subway station that was decorated for the perfume, and it was black and gold. And there was an advertisement that was playing on the subway windows where it was this like super spy woman who was in a black dress, and she was sneaking into the museum to steal something, and it was the bottle of perfume. And so for me, I remember that memory. And when I think of that perfume, I think of this like powerful woman who could go steal something, right? And really take her power. And so when I spray that perfume on, I take a moment and I add a little bit of extra intentionality. And I'm like, when I spray this perfume on, I am going to act as my future self today. I'm going to take actions that align with my goals, that align with my higher self. Because for me, this goal of helping women and helping people in general to unshame fitness and move away from the self-hate into self-love, I really do believe this is my life's work. And when I think about what my future self is doing, I think about like how I think she's going to be speaking on stages one day. And so that means that I get to think, okay, if I want to be the Emily who speaks on stages and I want to act like her today, okay, I got to act like the powerful woman that I am going to be, and I start acting like her now. And you can call that magic, you can call that spicy psychology, but it affects how I think and feel about myself just by using perfume. And so I use all of those things with my fitness clients to help them believe in themselves more. And mindset work is a whole lot more fun to do when you make it magical, because it's fun.
Yeah, it's definitely like something I can understand, because I'm a Buddhist, and we do a lot of meditation, we do a lot of chanting. And at the beginning of the day, we'll kind of set our meditation practice where we'll focus on what we want to happen and where we want to be. And when we vocalize that in our chanting and in our mindset, like when you kind of speak things, then things can happen. Like, so if you believe in yourself, like, I believe I'm going to get that job. I believe that this day is not going to be difficult because I'm going to get through everything because I believe I can. Then your mind, it's like a lot of mind body elements are, because if you are down on yourself, things will start to be self-fulfilling prophecies. If you start to be more up on yourself, and you could call it magic or spiritual or meditation, but once you start to have some positivity, not that you're going to be overly confident, and get too arrogant, but I think there's a matter of a certain level of confidence that you need. It's not necessarily arrogant. It's just you have to be able to believe in yourself. And if you're wrong about something. But in terms of what you're going to do and what you believe, it's a good place to be.
So I wanted to add, it's really interesting that you brought up the Buddhism and speaking your words, because I like to tell my clients that all of our words are magic spells. Because when you get into like Buddhism and like the chakra system and everything, like when you're speaking, you're activating your throat chakra. And my words right now are, well, you're hearing my words through your headphones, and we hear sound through vibrations. And so the vibration in my voice is touching your ears. And so my words, and to all of the listeners right now, are coming out and they are touching you. And so whether or not like you consciously sense this, how I am thinking and feeling about myself right now is coming out through my vibration. So, if I came onto this podcast in a really negative like headspace, people might subconsciously sense that in a way because of the tone. Yeah. And so how we talk about
musician, yeah. One of the
Go
things I
ahead.
do as a musician, I'm a synthesis. So what I do is I deal with sound waves. I do sound design. So I design my sounds from the waveforms. And understand, and being a Buddhist and being kind of, well, I'm part Native American as well too. The idea is like there's these universal keys that people kind of feel. And when musicians, we really believe it because we can actually trigger behavior when we play. We can see the
Hmm.
audience immediately respond, not just to our words, but the tones and the frequencies we're running on our instruments. And we can see what people do and how they behave. And you could have things that are very positive or kind of negative or jarring. And you can see the behavior, like in a punk crowd versus like maybe a soul music crowd or a jazz crowd. You can trigger like multiple genres, and different frequencies will trigger different behaviors. And you can actually see it. And once you realize that, then you can kind of own it.
See, that's fascinating. And I like to say that all science was once magic. We just don't have the tools to measure everything, but you can see, like, as a musician, so clearly that the music does affect how people think and feel based on the vibrations or the frequency. And so we just don't have the tools to measure it yet, but it is real. Just because like we can't see it doesn't mean that atoms don't exist. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I love hearing that.
Well, you can, it's just immediate feedback when you're playing a live show. Like when you have the bass line and people, you can see them moving.
Hmm.
People are triggered to just naturally dance or naturally get happy, or they show excitement, or they just cheer and they feel, good. Or they get into like a punk or grunge rocker place and the people are kind of aggressive and they see the crowd gets aggressive. And, people get laid back or they get more romantic because if it triggers things, it triggers memories, it triggers responses. It's just the key into your brain. Waves are, like you said, when you're talking, if you felt negativity, as a Buddhist, I believe that people will pick up that negativity.
Yeah.
And as a musician, I see it and I believe it. So yeah, maybe you can't science measure it right now, but you see the evidence of it from your own experience.
Yeah. So I'm curious because you mentioned it, that you have a Native American background.
Yeah, Cherokee and Blackfoot.
Okay. Do you do any like spiritual practices from that?
Well, the only thing is I know a lot of oral history from my great grandmother, who was
Hmm.
a Blackfoot, and or just kind of like spirit animal kind of connections. So
Yeah.
the practice I do is like this nature, listening to Gaia. Like, so if I go for a walk in a woods, I tend to be able to get animals to come up to me and have them kind of
Mm,
communicate with me. So they'll just come
I love
around.
that.
And because and it's just because I just have kind of like let go of the thinking and just kind of nature happen. And a lot of it is like if you become connected, then you can listen and you can
Hmm.
experience, and if you don't use your head as much, you kind of trust your gut, you trust yourself, you trust your soul, and then you're able to actually see things that other people feel things that other people don't feel. um,
Hmm.
so it's kind of hard to describe. It's a very spiritual kind of thing when you go out in nature and you just connect to the world around you without having your
Yeah.
headphones on, without looking at your
Yeah.
phone,
Hmm. And
without
really get
having a
into your
time
body.
schedule. Yeah, without having a time
Hmm.
schedule, go into nature, go in the woods, and actually don't say, "Well, I gotta be out of here in 15 minutes because I gotta do something," but
Yeah.
let it be. Just go out there and let experience the world without a time frame.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I asked because when I was kind of exploring what it meant to be a witch, I was exploring lots of different avenues because there's so many different types of witches and witchcraft. And I ended up doing a power animal guided meditation with a woman who was a shaman. It was over Zoom, who had been trained in a
Mm.
Native American form of shamanism. And I absolutely loved it. But then my second thought that came up was like, well, I don't want to appropriate like Native American practices if I
Oh,
want to
yes.
practice shamanism. Except then I learned that it's not just Native American indigenous practices that are shamanistic, that a lot of European, like indigenous spiritual practices, what we would call paganism, had
Oh,
the
similar.
same
Yeah,
things. And
it's
so,
worldwide. It's
yeah.
like
And so,
multiple
even though,
cultures.
yeah.
Multiple
And so,
cultures hit the same thing.
yeah. And so even though we don't really have much information about like Irish shamanism or Irish paganism, the few stories that we do have are very similar. And so I practice like a lot of shamanic journey meditations using kind of more Irish mythology and everything to kind of like stay in my own lane and everything. But that is why I asked, because for me, I was really drawn to that because of how individual it was, because I don't really want to go join a coven or a religious sect or anything and have someone else tell me what to do. Because I think
Mhm.
the powerful thing about spirituality is trusting your own inner authority and being able to get your answers from nature or your own meditations and everything.
Yeah, I kind of just let the spirit animals come to me and have my own
Yeah.
interpretation.
Hmm.
And the way I look at it is like I've been informed by my great grandmother's like oral history stories, but I don't get caught up in getting into any particular Cherokee or Blackfoot practice. I just kind of I trust my gut and I trust my
Yeah.
the lineage within me. I kind of I'm just gonna feel it. And
Hmm.
like if you're a jazz musician, are you gonna go and try to describe it on the bars, or do you just play it? And a lot of times I'm a very what I call basically like a stream of consciousness type of musician,
Yeah.
where I could only write on the bars, right? I could read music, but I'd rather just go play it and play what
Hmm.
I feel at the time and just put it down and not really think about it that heavy and just kind of go with what I felt at the moment, sound, painting. And like when you're in nature, you can do the same thing. Is that you don't overthink things and you're more receptive,
Hmm.
then things will happen.
I love that.
It's kind of just people say, well, how do you explain it? Well, it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
I thought the best way to explain it is what I just did.
Hmm.
But I guess getting back into the idea of strength training and the rigor, and then also trying to like balance that rigor with the being able to have a holistic life. So
Hmm.
you have to have some level of discipline, but like when does the discipline become overpowering and kind of lose its positivity?
Yeah. So the reason why I do strength training with my clients is because I want them to view fitness as something that can add to their lives as well. Instead of just focusing on shrinking, we can also focus on growing their strength, like physically growing stronger and building muscle instead of just focusing on shrinking. And so I I'd always tell my clients like, "Hey, if you want to go to the gym 5 days a week, I will write you a 5-day a week workout program. But if it ever comes at a point where like something changes in your life or your job is busier and we need to drop to a 4-day a week plan or a 3-day a week plan or a 2-day a week plan, then we can." And I even have some clients right now who I have one client who does a lot of dance competitions for her job. And so she's leading kids on trips every single weekend to for their dance competitions. And there's some weeks where she doesn't get to the gym at all, but she's going on walks and she's running all over the place for these dance competitions. And so I think what's really important is for her to know and for me to teach her and coach her that it's okay if she can't get to the gym one week because her life is so busy, because otherwise it would be
Mhm.
really easy for her to think like, I'm a failure as a client. I couldn't do any of my workouts this week, when sometimes life gets busy. And that doesn't mean that you have to quit the fitness journey, because so many people are
Mm.
all or nothing when it comes to things and they miss a week and they're like, well, that's it. I got to stop. When a fitness journey, it is a journey. And there are going to be things that come up in your life. And there have been weeks where, even as an athlete, where I'm not able to get every single workout in my plan or my program. And knowing that that's okay, and that I've got years and years of this ahead of me because I love it. And so strength training might not be for everyone, but you want whatever you choose to do on a fitness journey to be something that's sustainable. So sometimes I'll have clients who they tell me like that they want to do yoga classes as part of their program, or they have a running group that they have that they really value for the social aspect. And so then I'll work with them and I'll be like, okay, if you want to go to 2 yoga classes a week, then I'll write you a 2-day-a-week workout program. So that way your life isn't taken over by the gym and you still go to these yoga classes that you really love and enjoy, because there is more than one way to have success on a fitness journey. But you want to make sure that it's sustainable and enjoyable for you, because this isn't just something that's a quick fix. This is something that is transforming your life in the long term. And like for me to maintain the level of fitness that I have, I could just go to the gym 1 or 2 days a week. I'd be good. I don't have to keep going 5 days a week like I am now. Of course, I've got strength goals, and I've got a competition, a strength competition, not a bodybuilding competition that I'm training for. But it's very easy to maintain. Now, of course, if I stopped going to the gym altogether, then I would lose the muscle that I'd have, and will lose the level of fitness that I have. And hey, maybe one day in the future that might change. But for now, like, I value the energy that working out brings me. I value the community that I have at the gym. I love feeling strong. And so because I enjoy it, that's what makes it sustainable for me.
Yeah, 'cause I would think sometimes it's like if somebody gets in that kind of ritual or the process, but they don't enjoy it, then it actually is not positive. Even though they're doing
Yeah.
it, they're initially maybe for a positive reason, they get stuck on it because it's not like the whole point of, I think, anything you choose to do within the kind of discipline is because you must want something out of it, right? And what is it that you're talking to yourself like? What is your goal, right? So if your
Yeah.
goal was to do, the competition, or your goal is to feel better, to be more positive, to have energy, then you do things because of that. But then if you don't actually it doesn't reach your goal, and you're not actually finding that you have time to do the thing that you thought you were doing it for, then maybe that's when you have to like look at it as like, oh, this isn't actually doing what I wanted it to do.
Yeah. And then, of course, like if you feel like you can't accomplish the goals that you have set for yourself, then that brings up shame. And so there's so many like fitness programs out there. Like there's one called 75 Hard, which is like you have to do every single day. You have to do 2 workouts a day for 75 days straight. You can't have any dessert, etc. And if you mess up, you got to restart. And that gets people into this perfectionist mindset to where they feel like if they have one mess up, then they got to throw out the whole thing. And so that's why, so many people go on fitness journeys and fail, because they think that they have to work out 6 days a week, or they have to
It's very
hit
extreme.
10,000 steps a day, right? That's a big one out there. You have to walk 10,000 steps a day. No, you don't. You don't have to do anything. You want to do what's best for you. And if you are someone who sits in a cubicle all day and you barely get 2,000 steps a day, well, maybe your fitness journey starts with just getting 3 or 4,000 steps a day, because 10,000 is so far out of your league that it's not going to be possible for you. And you're going to feel like a failure every single day if you can never reach that goal. And so I always try to help clients to be like, okay, if this is your baseline starting fitness, we're just going to go one step up. All right. We're not trying to be like a fitness athlete here, because that's not going to be possible for you. And you're going to feel like a failure every single week.
So what do you think about, like, sometimes I see these kind of like the bros you mentioned that they're totally, chiseled, abbed, and they're like, it seems like the things that they're trying to kind of push on their audience is way beyond what like is reasonable. And
Yeah.
so like right from the start, you can kind of see, well, that must be like 50 to 70% failure rate because most people aren't going to be that guy, right? Because
Hmm.
that's his job. And
Yeah.
that's not your job. Like your job is like you're probably in the cubicle.
Yeah.
So
And
how
I,
can we get to that? So it seems kind of unrealistic.
yeah. And I think a lot of that comes down to is like a lot of people who are athletes who reach that level of fitness, that doesn't necessarily translate to being a good coach or being a good teacher. Because I know for me, one of the things that I've realized that is different about me from my clients is that I have a different mindset for my clients. I am the type of person who will just do the workout programs because I deeply desire that fitness result and the competition results that I've had so much. Whereas my clients don't think the same way that I do. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong or bad in any way, but
Mhm.
the reason why I do so much mindset with them is because I'm trying to help them to see the type of mindset that I have to help them harness it to apply it to their own lives in a sustainable way. And so you get these coaches out there who don't realize that people think differently from them. And so they just spout out like the bro, like you have to do this, you have to eat on a meal plan, you got to go to the gym and do this exact workout because that's what worked for them without necessarily thinking that that's not going to work for the average human being.
Yeah, that's interesting because like you have a very open-minded, dynamic point of view that I think, like being a creator, I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, that appeals to me because it's like less rigid. Because like being a creative person, we kind of ebbs and flows. It's going all over
exactly.
the place, and sometimes we get really intense. Like we'll do like hours and hours of practice, but then we walk away from it, right? Because we
Yeah.
know we're getting there's a certain amount of times you do something too much, and then you don't really get a positive result from
Hmm.
continuing to do it. And so you have to know you get the declining benefit because it's like
Hmm.
what's the benefit you're actually doing damage. So I get the idea that when you're saying that you're willing to have programs for people for like 2 days a week, maybe one day a week, like based on reality of what people
Hmm.
have to do. That seems like something that you could try. Like that
Yeah,
you would not be scared to try because it's not something that you're gonna have this high mountain to climb. That like I think that seems a way more inviting approach to me. And
exactly.
I think our audience is probably picking up that too.
Yay. Yeah, because I have clients who, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to agree with this, where I've had a client who was really scared and anxious to go to the gym, period. And um, you'll get those bro coaches who are like, just suck it up. You'll feel better after your workout. All of those like classic like fitnessisms, like no one else is going to be looking at you in the gym. Everyone's focused on themselves, except that creates shame because then my client would think like, I'm bad for having this anxiety. There's something wrong with me. When
Mhm.
I had a conversation with her and we kind of dug into things a little bit and kind of did that emotional somatic embodiment work that I do with them. And we figured out that she was anxious to go to the gym because she experienced a lot of bullying when she was growing up. And
Mhm.
the gym, when you think about maybe those cliques that there were in like middle school and high school, like those jocks, the
They
people
might
who
be
were
all
athletes, the
they might
football
be there.
players, the cheerleaders, they're scary. And
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. I experienced a lot of bullying growing up as well. And so I completely understand that. And so when she was able to see that the reason why she was scared to go to the gym was because she was scared that people were going to bully her because of her childhood experiences, and she was able to validate that and release the shame, then we were able to come up with solutions together for how she can feel more comfortable in the gym. Because instead of like shaming herself and being like, oh, this is silly, this is unreasonable, she was able to tell herself, like, okay, no, it makes sense why I'm anxious to go to the gym because maybe she did have a bad experience with a jock in high school. And
Mhm.
now she's able to come from a place of empowerment and be like, okay, here's what I'm going to do to help me feel comfortable at the gym so that now she can go without feeling that overwhelming anxiety that she doesn't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, you gotta have to you give yourself the permission or the belief. Like I have a right to be at the gym. It's just because when
Yeah.
I was in gym class, all the jocks made me feel bad because I wasn't doing the push-ups right or it wasn't as graceful as they were. That I'm
Yeah.
not gonna care about that because I'm doing it because I need to do it for me, and it's
Hmm.
not about what anybody else thinks. I'm where I am. I'm definitely gonna get better, and it's in my own journey. But
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be scared to begin that in public and let all that what other people think about me affect you.
Yeah.
And you have to get to a point where that doesn't affect you because a lot of times people will not do something because they're so concerned about what the rest of the world is going to do with whatever they're going to do.
Yeah.
You know, as a poet or artist or writer or
Hmm.
musician, like there's things you won't do because oh well, I don't know if anybody's going to get it. Well, that's probably the thing you should do. As a producer, I
Yeah.
always tell people the thing that you think nobody should hear, that's probably the thing you should work on first.
Yes. And that is why I do a lot of emotional embodiment work with clients, because there's things like going to the gym that bring up fear, things like being yourself and really releasing people pleasing, that brings up fear. And if you never allow yourself to feel safe with feeling that fear, then it's always going to control your life. And you're always going to be running away from fear instead of running towards the things that you do want. So always avoiding the gym and never going because you're scared, when in reality, even if you have a little bit of fear going into the gym, you're still going to be okay. And so allowing yourself to feel safe, feeling those feelings, knowing that like it's not the same situation as like when you were bullied in middle school and high school, or whatever fear situation is coming back up in your adult life, helps you to move through that fear and do the scary things anyways, like posting a song in your case, or going to the gym, or being yourself authentically on social media. That brings up fear for me still sometimes. But the challenge is, the difference between your present day self and your future self, the one who's reached your goals, is that your future self has done the scary things and continues to do scary things. And so to get to from where you are now to where you want to go, you have to be willing to face that fear over and over and over again. And so that's why I help my clients a lot with embodying their emotions to somatically release them, so that way they're not like imprisoned by their own fear.
So I think we actually have been talking a really good conversation. We reached our point, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
tends to be where we have to let us audience go. But I wanted to bring up, we do have a link up there for your Instagram, which is
Mhm.
instagram.com/emyogi_fit. And is that the best way for people to contact you?
Yes, I do answer all of my messages on Instagram. And from my Instagram, I have a link in my bio where you can check out my different programs. My fitness and life coaching program is called Macro Mind Coaching. And then I also have a mindset only program, which is called Fitness Switch Academy. And you can find all of the info that links to my cookbooks, food blog, YouTube, all of my social media in that bio.
Well, I want to let everybody know that will be clickable on the permanent links, and that we will be creating a landing page for you to give to your audience, and they'll be able to go anywhere they like to watch or listen to podcast, and everywhere that link will be clickable. They'll be able to go right to it, and we do encourage people who watch or listen to our podcast to go to the links that we mentioned. Again, it's instagram.com/emyogi_fit. And thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I had a lot of fun conversing with you.
Well, we love to do this. It's a really cool thing, podcaster, to let everybody know. Like when we were young, we were very scared. We were like not into public speaking at all. And now we do this podcast, and it shows that you can actually overcome your fear. So
Yeah.
anytime if you challenge yourself, you can actually end up doing something that you enjoy, that you might have been the most fearful thing in your life. Was like public speaking, and then you end up doing it all the time.
Yeah.
So,
I love that. Okay.
so thank you again
Thank
for
you so
being on the
much.
show.
Okay.